after that Christmas concert, it went real well. I picked up 10 kids who came down to me. I was in band at another school. My friends in band. I want to be, because there was nothing of quality in the school except maybe FFA or a couple special clubs, but anything of what you call your frontline things like sports or anything, people wanted to be part of something of quality. And then what happened once I started developing good relationships with kids and kids outside of the room, the kids became the best recruiters. Kids were bringing me kids like crazy.
This podcast is sponsored by FJM, Fred J. Miller Incorporated, found at fjminc.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Marching Roundtable podcast. This is your host, Tim Hinton, the beast of the marching arts. You're going to love this conversation. I'm talking with J.R. Carlisle. J.R., how are you?
I'm doing great, Tim. It's good to see you. It's been a while since we've done one of these, like 8 years.
So. It has been a long time, but you've been busy, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I appreciate you talking to me again. So listen, everybody, imagine that you take over a band program, and if there are 4 students that really can hardly play a scale. And 6 years later, you have 70 students playing at a very high level, and you're beloved in the community, and you've made a huge impact. JR has done this. So, JR, I'm excited to talk about this.
And it's a retirement job.
A retirement job. That's another interesting wrinkle because you did retire, and then, so we're going to talk about that. You went back to your hometown, right?
Yeah, to be with my family.
Okay, so everybody knows, JR, all the stuff you've done. You've been a band director, an administrator, marching arts adjudicator, and like designer, all the stuff you can do in this world that we're talking about. You have done at a really high level. So why did you decide to go back to teaching? Why did you decide to go to that school? And can you start the process of explaining it to us?
Well, as you know, I was living in South Carolina. That's where I was at the last time we did a webinar.
Yes.
And I retired out of Ohio I had a very fortunate, good career as a band director and a principal. And it was time, all the years running, judging for BOA, DCI, WGI at the same time as having groups competing in all those, I lost track of my family. I'm the youngest of 8. My oldest sister was terminal. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go home and spend time with them. It was a change of lifestyle to come back to West Virginia. I'm on the border of Ohio. I'm in Dayton in 2.5 hours still, where I lived for 25, 30 years. But long story short, I thought, I still got a little gas in the tank, and I never was a superintendent. It was my ultimate goal. And so I interviewed to be the assistant principal of the school I went to high school at. And I had never thought I'd move back. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I'd move back here. Principal calls me, says, JR, we have 2 candidates. One is you're the better interview, you're the stronger candidate, but this guy's really strong, but he's been on my leadership team 5 years. I can't make up my mind. And I said, you got to hire the guy that's been with you. That's an easy call. And so of course, everyone, it's a small town, everyone knows everyone, and everyone at the board office, the superintendent had been his first year teaching. I was a senior in chemistry, and the personnel director was in band with me. She calls me, she says, look, we could see you being back in administration. We're glad you're back home. We do have a job to get you in the system. And I said, where's that at? And it's a little country school. And honestly, this is nothing that's not openly talked about here. There's 3 schools in our county, high schools, junior high school. It's a 7 through 12 building and it's been the wicked stepsister since I was little. And everyone, it's like, well, poor Hannah. And I actually grew up on Crab Creek Road, not far from there. I could easily have gone there. And she said, well, the music job at Hannah. And I'm thinking, I'm J.R. Carlisle. I've been a principal for my art school. I have a Sutler Shield. I judged DCI championships. All the ego things that I shouldn't have gone through. And then I thought, what are you talking about? Kids are kids. They need a director. They need somebody to do something. I'll go out there. So I walked in. It was a very dysfunctional school, not a good culture, dysfunctional from a leadership standpoint. And the culture was not strong, not a winning culture. Football team losing by 80, you get the picture. It just, woe is us. So I walked in I won't call it a band room. It's a 625 square foot room. And there were 4 kids that had any band experience. And even saying they could almost play a scale, giving them a lot of credit. They're nice kids. And I'm not bad mouthing them. It's not their fault.
Sure, but this is where they were, is all the point.
Just where they are. Right.
Kids are never to fault in those situations, but that's where they were
That's
when you
where
walk
they
in.
were.
This is what's so interesting is like starting from scratch with 4 kids with any kind of playing experience. That's a monumental task. But I love that you decided to do that for that community and for those students.
Well, and like I said, when I got there, the punchline, I got to get my punch. This is the title. It's the title of a clinic I'm doing. It. I'm going to probably present it 2-3 other states. People reached out to me about this, and like I said, hardly no equipment, and this poor little kiddy's driving me crazy here. No drum heads. The one pair of crash cymbals didn't match each other, and their handles were literally Walmart bags. And I beat the living devil out of those cymbals, and could never get them to break. They were the best cymbal handles I ever saw. But now, long story short, a couple of administrative jobs came open, wasn't the right fit. I was actually fined for superintendent a couple of years ago, but I believe you're put in a place for a reason. And what happened was, it had been easy to say, well, I'll just take a paycheck for you, but that's not me. Well, I looked at it, I was hired to go to work on a band. I didn't know how long I was going to be here, so I just went to work doing what I know how to do. And I've built bands before, not from this extreme. And now, after 6 years, there's about 70 kids, a little over 70 kids in the program. There's only 220 kids in the building, 7 through 12. So we're like 34% of the student population.
Okay, now wait a minute. I want everybody to get that. This is one of the things I want to talk about, JR, is that it's remarkable. A third of the school is in your music program.
Yes.
So how did you do that? If it had the culture that was not there, you had this tiny little fraction of the school. That's what I think is one of the things that's really interesting I want us to talk about. What did you do to create excitement, interest, recruit those students, get the culture back up in that short amount of time? Because a third of the school, everybody, we all dream about having a third of our school in our program. It's amazing.
One word, relationship, or 2 words, relationship building. It's always about relationships. And one thing about that school, because everyone had general music, and I hadn't taught general music in 20-some years, 7th and 8th grade. I've had every kid. And what happened, the first concert, I had 9 kids play. I'm a sax player, but I was the only trumpet player on the concert. And our Christmas concert, the first performance of the year, I was nervous. Last time was a band was 20 years ago. Now, in that time, I wrote and worked and taught a lot of good bands, but this was my own band. And last time I conducted was grade 6 literature. And our whole Christmas concert was rote taught, which I don't believe in, but you do what you have to do sometimes. And it was out of the beginning book. And the student body went crazy, like we just won the World Series. And I was like, what is going on? And then the kids went home early. It was the last day for Christmas break. I walked in the teachers' meeting we had to have before we left, and the principal's celebrating. Everyone's going nuts. And I'm embarrassed because I'm like, we just played. And they're like, we actually understood what the band was playing. And they were like, you don't get what that means because of the history. And so from there, the next year, some of the kids graduated. None of those kids came back. It was not because they didn't want to, just scheduling, vocational school, those kinds of things. And so I recruited some kids in the hall just by relationships. And I had some kids come up from the elementary that I started. And what was interesting was, so we started the second year. This is actually the end of 5 years of this, because the first year doesn't count because it was brand new the next year.
Right. But wait a minute. But what you did the first year was establish this is something worth being a part of.
Fair enough. But as far as kids being in the band,
sure.
And so, I started getting some excitement in the elementary. I had the elementary built. COVID killed the elementary. But our numbers still grew at the high school during COVID because there was nothing else to do. And what happened, and it really hit, and this is the amazing part to me. Let me just preface this. Since then, I've been able to purchase $130,000 of equipment through grants I've written and some donations. And I'm telling you, we have a full clarinet consort. The quality equipment, I just bought a huge professional Stradivarius bass trombone, some of the mallet equipment. The stuff I buy is quality. I'm building it for the long term, and I still have about a $92,000 wish list. And because I've become principal now, that I'm still keep writing grants for. And I know
we did mention that I did mention that everybody. He is just this coming year have taken over as the principal of the school, which is very cool. And you're going to be helping to mentor the new band director. But I want to back up for a second.
We'll come back to that because
you got a lot of information, a lot of equipment, infrastructure, all that stuff that you needed for your band program through writing grants. And we're not going to sit here and talk about how to write grants today, but I want to remind everybody that that's a thing. And there are actually webinars and things on our website at marchingartseducation.com about how to do that. So I just want people to know that if you want to pursue that. So anyway, keep going. This is fascinating.
Back to the grants real quick. There's so much money in a community, and our school sets out in a cornfield. There's no houses. No one can walk to that school. It's on a hill out in the country. The main town, Point Pleasant, because all the county commissioners, bank presidents, a lot of those guys remember me when I was a kid, I grew up with. So I had an in with those people. And they were letting me know that there's so many organizations around here that none of the schools realize that will give you money if you just write the grant. And so I've been writing grants like and other stuff. I figured out that the ESSER money could go for band equipment, presented it to my director of schools, who's a former band director, someone I went to college with. And next thing I know, all three schools got $25,000. That was the kickoff. And then I got the Save the Arts grant. That helped. And then other grants I've written. But what's amazing is how much equipment I've gotten in a short time that even surprises me. And I go back, like I said, I had a very fortunate career in terms of my band and the bands from all parts of the country I've worked with. I've judged in 42 states, and my history. I've never seen anything like this. And this is not me bragging. This is what the community, the school, everyone. So going back to how we grew in numbers, to give you an idea how this thing exploded, 2 years ago at Christmas, okay, there were 19 kids on that Christmas concert, which they were celebrating. We had one drummer. And that spring, I was going to take them to Kings Island, about 2.5 hour drive, and do one of those little festivals to kind of build some confidence. We did grade 1.5 literature, and those kids worked harder than anything I've ever seen since.
Wow.
And our goal was to get a 2. And we got one. And after that Christmas concert, it went real well. I picked up 10 kids who came down to me. I was in band at another school. My friends in band. I want to be, because there was nothing of quality in the school except maybe FFA or a couple special clubs, but anything of what you call your frontline things like sports or anything, people wanted to be part of something of quality. And then what happened, once I started developing good relationships with kids and kids outside of the room, the kids became the best recruiters. Kids were bringing me kids like crazy.
Which is really how this works now, because that's their relationships now coming into play.
So, this is something I couldn't have done at 22 or 25. And it's like I told you, I could have done something similar, but not to this level, because, listen, I love kids. And when I was 30, I loved the kids. And I drove them hard. I want to be a BOA regional finalist. I wanted to do that. We won a Southern Shield. We did all those things.
Right.
But at my age, I'm turning 58 next month. I see kids differently now, and I have an appreciation for them. And, when I left being a band director in 2000, I was burnt. I burned myself out like a lot of young guys do. I finally felt like I was 22 being a band director again, that love. but with the maturity and experience that I have,
Right.
that allowed me to deal with the kids and meet them where they're at. Because I've been a principal of an inner city high school. I've been a principal of a performing arts school. I've taught in all types of schools. This is a really rough, a lot of meth, opioids,
Wow.
grandparents raising kids. And most of my kids use horns that I've found for them. And so what happened was this special bond started to happen, and it happened when we did ratings. Now, put this in perspective. And the kids and I listened to that Kings Island performance, which was 2 years ago in May. Okay. We listen to it and we go back and listen to things. And it's never to make fun. It's always to say, this is where we were in our process.
Right.
We'll look where we are. Where can we be in 2 years? Now, to put this all in perspective, the next year we finally did our state ratings and did a grade 3 and got straight ones. Right. This year, and there was 28 kids on stage at Kings Island 2 years ago in May. Less than 2 years later in April, I had 60 some kids sitting on stage. Only 20 left from that band a year and a half before. So in a year and a half, 2 years, I added 40 kids. And we played grade 4 and got straight ones.
Okay, so now how clearly there's a premise here that give the community something of quality, give those students something of quality, they will want to be a part of it. I feel like that's a premise that we all need to be reminded of, right?
When I first got there, Tim, I was told you'll never be able to have a night concert. No one will go. No, you'll never be able to after school because no one will go. Our first concerts were during school. Then I started doing 4 o'clock. And this year we did evening concerts. And there's a very rich matriarch of the school that was in the first band. She's just a doll. It runs a clothing bank and food bank for the kids and everything. She bought us all concert blacks. Our two concert, our winter concert or Christmas concert and our spring concert, she said outside of graduation, she's never seen crowds like this. And these are just off the ridge, good old boys.
Sure.
Who just want to see kids at the school do something, who are not necessarily band people. Now, what happened is as I saw this thing start to happen when they were 7th and 8th graders and a few older kids that I recruited. This was the first year I actually graduated a kid that did 4 years of high school. So when we got straight ones doing grade 4, that was with about 20 some 7th and 8th graders. And we don't have a combined band class. We have 2 band classes because the school's so small. They've let me try. I can't make the schedule work. And I've done several schedules when I was a principal.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's about 15 kids because of vocational and other things can't take the class, but they're very dedicated because it's something they love. And what I told those 7th and 8th graders who are now my coming year sophomore, juniors, and seniors, I said, it's going slow for you now. But I prepped them for I started working on their leadership qualities then so that when they became who they are now, I said it will go much faster for the 7th and 8th graders because they will look up to you. And this spring, while we were getting ready, some of my sophomores and juniors would hear 7th and 7th graders in the back room playing grade 4 literature and playing it. And they were like, I couldn't do that as a 7th grader. How can they? I said, because of you, because they have you to look up to. So now there's a standard that kids want to meet.
Okay, so wait a minute. You're building this culture. You've built this culture. You've taught them these things. I think this is so valuable. But the idea that I love here is that you recognized from the beginning, this is not going to fix in a year or two. Oh. This is a long-term project. And you started thinking long-term early on, because I think this is what band directors get in a hurry. And I understand that, man. When I started as a band director out of college, I wanted to do all the things right now, right? I didn't want to, not that I didn't stay at a school and build, but I love this idea that when they were very young, you started talking to them about how they were going to be important in building the culture and setting the example, et cetera, for the future. I think that is super powerful. I want to remind everybody of this concept. It's not too early ever to start talking about, here's the impact you can have for the program in the future.
Well, and I'm not bragging. I have 2 masters and doctorate, their own leadership. That's something I study and take pride in. And it became kind of I don't mean a living experiment to me. And the connection I had with the kids, there's many times they said, you know, Dr. Carlisle, you don't know what you've done for us. I'm like, you don't know what you've done for me. You've given me love back as something that I lost. Not that I didn't still love it, but the love of doing it hands-on, full time. And so there became I even was finalist for superintendent a couple of years ago, and it just the right job didn't come. And then I got to the point where I didn't really want to leave them, and I had no intention of leaving them. And this spring, I surprised them. We did a big trip last year. Did another big trip this year. Last year we went to Cedar Point. I mean, I had kids that didn't know how to order McDonald's, who shook when they handed money to the clerk or the cashier. I had kids that their big deal was to cross the river into Ohio and go to Walmart on Saturday. I had kids that never been out of the county before. And this year we did Virginia Beach. Well, I surprised them, and we have been selected to be the official band representing the state of West Virginia 2025 Pearl Harbor Memorial Parade on December 7th.
Wow.
Now, so I made a commitment right there for 2 more years. I want to see those kids all the way through that I started in 5th grade. My superintendent kept saying, I want you as a principal. So I said, look, I just made this commitment. Okay. And then we can talk about that. And I'm probably a year by that because I was going to lose a big part of my class. The band would have been fine the next year. I didn't want to like go away and then lose 20 some kids and then say, oh, here, new person, you follow this.
Right.
Because I've been the guy that's followed the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was trained for 3 years as his assistant before he turned it over to me, I still made the mistakes. I want to change it all my way. You know, one of the things I did in a clinic in the state of West Virginia this year, too many people go in and want to change the culture.
Right away.
Right away. Because we all want it to be this way. And I hear guys talk, oh, I changed this and they've been doing it this way for 30 years and I'm going to change. Why? That's what the community hired you to keep that up. You know, I've changed.
Or that's a 5-year culture change project.
Right.
But you can't do it in a term because you do lose people.
Right. And I made that mistake even after I was groomed to take it over. I still screwed. And so what was cool about this, there was no culture. I got to create the culture, but the culture was created with the kids. And I got to tell you 2.5 stories.
All right.
That will pay off. We were going to do 2 grade 4s this spring. And again, 2 years ago, we're doing grade 1s. And in West Virginia, you don't do sight reading. You're not required to do a march or a warm-up. It's just your 2 tunes. So band directors here have a theory, three approaches. I'm going to do a warm-up, full warm-up. I don't care. Or I don't want to show anything yet. So I'm not doing anything. Or I'll do a chorale. That's, I come from Ohio for 30 years where you do a full march. So I start every concert for March. I'm a believer in the history. So we come on stage. My kids have to do 3 tunes for contest. And we do a full concert march as a warm-up. And of course, that's dangerous because if you blow that up, the judges are done with you before you play your 2 part.
That's right. And a lot of expectations around marches in the world of band.
Or if you come out swinging and nail it, they might be a little more forgiving, which has worked in our favor.
Sure.
So anyway, long story short, we're going to, so again, 2 years ago, we're doing a march of 2 grade 1s, 1.5. Grade 3 the next year. This year, 2 4s. So I picked them, and the 2 4s and the march. It was about a 3 march. But we don't have a lot of ensemble time. And when we do the ensemble time, we don't hardly fit in the room. If we go to the cafeteria, it just rings. So we actually took a day and went to Point Pleasant, the big school, and used our auditorium. But anyway, I got worried about the lack of ensemble time. One of them was incantations, Robert W. Smith, rest in peace. God love Robert.
Yeah.
And my woodwinds could play it. My drums weren't feeling it. And I was worried about so I thought, you know what, I'm going to back off to a 3. So I picked 3 or 4 3s I liked. I explained to kids. They were disappointed. But what I told them was, I said, here's what I'm going to do. We do a volunteer practice every Thursday. unless there's something special. I average 30 to 40 kids at every practice. They got nothing else to do. So, or 25 to 30. Okay. I said, whoever shows up to this volunteer practice, we're going to sight read like 4 tunes. Okay. And they're all grade 3s that I like. And you will pick, if you show up, you get to pick the one we're doing for ratings. Now, this is a young band. They've only been to like a couple amusement park ratings and state ratings ones. They got ones at all, except the 2 the first year. So they came in, we read through the 3 or 4 tunes. And at the end of practice, there's about 15 minutes left, and they did a real good job. I said, what'd you think? And Tim, for the next 15 minutes, and I'm a believer in, like, my kids know what the rubrics are. My kids know what they're being judged on. They know why we program a concert. We talk about pacing, all these things. I want them to be educated about what to do, not just play F sharp here. There's a purpose about everything we do, and I want them to know that. So the kids started talking, and some of the kids you never expect. Dr. Carlisle, I like this tune because the way it paced with the other tunes. This shows our strengths. We got to be careful with this tune because of weakness. This contrasts well with this tune. This is too much. They went on, and no offense to several staffs, because I've literally been in hundreds of critiques over the years. Sure. Band, guard, winter percussion, and drum corps. And I've talked to the best of the best, and I've had some amazing. Sorry, my cat's knocking things down. I've talked to the best of the best. You name them, I've talked to them, and have gotten a great education from them. But I've also talked to some people not as articulate, and they sat there and articulated to me better about what we need to do, why we needed to do it, than I've had a lot of band directors and trained staff do.
Yeah.
And at the end, I let them vote, and they were all unanimous on the one, and it's the one they should have picked. But you know what was the thing that made me the most proud? You know what they never did? They never asked me an opinion. Wow. They never said, what do you think, Dr. Carlisle? I never told them what I thought. They trusted now, but part of that's they trusted me that if I said these are the tunes, they knew I was fine with any one of them. Now I had my opinions, and I let them go through the process, and they picked it, and it was fine for us. Okay. That brought tears to my eyes of joy just on the way home, because I realized we were getting somewhere, not just mechanically with the
okay. So I want to talk about this for a minute, because you taught them to have the agency to trust themselves to be smart enough to figure this out. I think that is maybe the most remarkable thing you said so far. You know what I mean? Like, not only did you teach them how to be good musicians, but you taught them how to analyze, figure it out, to feel like they had enough information amongst themselves to decide. That is a remarkable accomplishment.
Well, you know what's kind of cool, Tim? When I left being a band director in 2000, we didn't have this YouTube thing. I look up one day and I hear my Barry sax player, who was my best alto, and I bought this new Barry, and I put her on it. She's a monster. And I hear this beautiful flute I brought. I look up and it's her. I didn't know she'd been playing flute. I have so many kids doubling instruments. I'm fixing up old instruments, giving them to them. And I looked at her and I said, I didn't know you played flute. She says, I've been practicing so-and-so's at home. I said, where'd you learn to do that beautiful vibrato? I didn't teach you that. You know, she says, oh, I looked at a YouTube video. And kids come in all the time. Not that I'm saying go let your kids learn off YouTube, but the kids are picking up on stuff and coming in, and they'll like show me a double tongue exercise and stuff that I haven't got to yet. Stuff they need to know.
But again, they have the agency to know to go learn it and want to go learn it.
Yes, that's blown me away.
That's awesome.
And I'll come back to a fun example when we talk about the marching band we're bringing up for the first time this year. If my cat knocking that bottle around,
we can't hear that, so don't worry.
Oh, good. Okay, he's bugging me to death. I'll tell you about our instruments we're using in our show, and you'll laugh because it goes back to kids having, going out and searching.
Yeah.
So many of my kids are doubling instruments, and I didn't know it. And they're like, why didn't you told me you bought a tenor sax trombone player person? Well, I didn't want to bother you. You're so busy. Okay, get in here. Let me show you that thing. We're bringing on marching band for the first time this year. And it's a competitive show. It's a volunteer. We'll get into that in a minute. And I said, well, we have our stand cheers, but we should learn some pep tunes, So I just, what? I just said to the kids, whoever wants to send me some pep tune ideas, go on YouTube. So I got lists sent to me, and I went through and listened to them, picked what was quality, what wasn't, what the fans would like, what would work for them, and blah. So all the music I just ordered for pep tunes, kids picked. Of course, I have final say. I don't just give them autonomy. So back,
listen, but you're giving them that you're giving them input into their own world. You're letting them make some decisions. Right. I think a lot of directors miss that point. Giving them any kind of ownership like that is so powerful.
Oh, and when I was 35 or 31, and like I said, directing my grade 6 wind ensemble written straight, I wouldn't have dared thought that way. I was the boss. By God, it's this way, and this is the way we're going to do it. I'm a different person now with age. And I see things differently, especially after being an administrator and going back into the classroom.
Right.
That changed me.
Oh, yeah.
So the other story I will share with you is I teach the kids, I've said, we use ratings has been our guide. And they want to one. But I educate them on the judging process, and that just because you get a 1 doesn't mean you deserved it. Just because you got a 2 doesn't mean you deserved it. It all comes down to how did you feel? What memory are you going to have 30 years from now? We use the rating as a guide point, as a challenge point, but not the end all. And I've told them stories about bands I've gotten that came in last or got a 2, but we were so excited for our performance. And I've also had bands win the grand champion or get straight 1s, and we were disappointed for our performance. But they've not experienced that. We were on the way of being very special at ratings, and we ended up with 30 bands over schools 10 times our size, being one of the top 4 or 5 rated bands there. And their goal was to be the best band there. And we were in the top 4 or 5, even though it's not numbered, but you could tell by the ratings and what they play and stuff. So anyway, we had a lot of flooding issues. We missed a lot of school, and we lost they understand how to pace to a climax for performance. That's something I feel I'm strong at, how to get them to that point. And right. The kids have been through it enough now. They understand. It threw us off our game. They came in that morning. I knew we were in trouble. And it's because it's still new to them. But some of those older kids, we got straight 1s the last couple of years. We'll be fine. We're experienced. No, you're not. You're still a baby. And when the older kids were worried about the younger kids going to screw up, and I use this as a learning tool later. I said, you guys forgot one thing. You forgot to worry about your own performance. Because what happened was, we didn't have a good warm up. We went on stage. The march was superb. So I thought we were okay. And then we blew up. For us, it wasn't what we expected. And so we went into the room to put our instruments up. I was ready for a 2, which was a shame because they should be a 1 band. And the kids know not to whine, moan, throw down stuff. I just said, okay, talk to me. And they know how to handle. They know what I expect. They sat there and articulated for about 5 minutes, taking turns. Well, we did this. This was an issue. We've never had this trouble before, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're ready for our 2. Okay. They ended up and I went in. I knew some of the judges from 30 years ago, and they were like, dude, great band. I said, dude, I'm sorry. We just weren't on there. They're like, what are you talking about? You're the best band we've heard so far. And we got straight 1s. So,
right, but your point is, the rating has to make sense for you. Have to put it in context.
All right. So I went to the kids, and I said, look, I'm proud of you. We didn't have our best game today, and we had a band night I created where all the bands in the community get together and play the ratings tunes. And I said, we have that coming up, and we have our spring trip where we're doing something at Busch Gardens. And I said, But you know what? That just shows you we have established high standards for ourselves. So even though we didn't meet our standard, we met the state standard, and you still got straight ones.
Well, and
So
the other thing too is it's okay, I think, to put it in context because you did have this major disruption and they overcame that. So that's
right,
another accomplishment.
right, which I told them I said, this was the hardest rate I ever been through. I said, it drained me. I said, and I had 3 couples break up that week, you name it, and all the drama, all that stuff. And I said, when some of my leaders are coming in, not in their concert black with tennis shoes on and stuff that they shouldn't be doing, it turned out to be a great learning opportunity. And they felt like they still earned a 1, but they knew they had something left in the tank. And so when I announced Hawaii to them, I said, look, guys, we still, because we don't have marching band, they're not used to traveling. So when we go on a trip in the spring or we go to ratings, that's the first time they really travel. It's not the process like when you run on fall, they're not used to that. I said, we're getting ready to go to Virginia Beach and Busch Gardens for 3 days. I said, we have to grow up more and act better than we did last year. They did good for their first trip, but they had a lot of little things. It's the first time.
Sure.
And again, it's a 7 through 12 band. So there's a lot of age discrepancies and different, things to deal with. And I said, if we had to, so they're all excited about Hawaii. I said, if we had to go to Hawaii today, we're not ready. And they looked at me. I said, we're not mature enough. I said, not you as a person. There's a lot of wonderful, mature young people here. But as a program, we're still in the infancy stage. You guys don't understand this from my perspective. And they get the whole, okay, you've been around longer, you understand. And I talked to them about, you'll understand this more in 2 years, or you'll understand, when they get mad at a 7th grader, remember what it was like to be a 7th grader, And I said, here's the way I will equivocate us. We play very well. And we take that very serious with a lot of pride. But we're the equivalent of the 6'2", 250-pound 13-year-old boy. We look like a man, we sound like a man, but we get the mind of an 8-year-old. And I said, we have to mature as a program, not as kids, as a program to be able to do Hawaii. And they understood that. And they did so much better on the Virginia Beach trip.
But see, this is a number of times, Jared, that you have talked about sort of putting things in context and teaching the students this big picture of where they are and where they fit into the world. And I think this is really powerful.
I came back to West Virginia. I'm not gonna upset my West Virginia friends. Bands are just not exposed nationally. Okay. They just don't have that exposure. And I have a lot of people ask me, what's it like? What's it like? What have you seen? What can we do to be like this or be like that? And
right.
And what happened is people found out my background. There's no state system in marching band. You can go a grand champion the first weekend out is going to score 90 something. And bands will start in the small class and the numbers will grow as they go up. I mean, it was like that when I was in school. The bigger the class, the bigger the school. So I actually wrote sheets that are being that we implemented a few shows this year. This year we had about 15 shows. They're being reviewed and we're doing audio tapes. And let me list the names of people doing educational training tapes for our website. Jay Webb, Dean Westman, Richard Salcedo, Marie Shapinski, Tim Cochran. I could go on.
So you brought this level of expertise to West Virginia.
Right. Matt Harloff. I could go on. Joel Denton. I mean, you name it. I got him. Oh yeah. I even got Joel Denton to come in and do a leadership clinic.
Oh, and he's so great at that.
Oh yeah. And so I've exposed these kids to things.
That's great.
Matter of fact, they're going to see their first drum corps show ever. They've rarely seen a marching band, but I'm setting it up. I won't say who because of my connections with a certain big name drum corps. We're going to watch and practice and probably are going to arc up around my kids.
Oh, wow.
And they've never heard anything like that. They've rarely.
Now, wait a minute. So you're making the last point I wanted to point out, because I've been making some notes as we've been talking here. And the last big thing I wanted to point out is, and I know you're aware of this, but I just want to say it, is that what you're doing to expand the universe of that school and that community. And already you're describing it in multiple ways. You're taking them places they've never been. You're taking them on trips. You're expanding that part. There's a lot of times very small schools and small towns, they haven't been a lot of places. And this is one of the things, right? And the other thing you're doing is you're bringing this level of expectation, this level of expertise, all of this stuff into them, explaining it all to them. Like, this to me is the most powerful thing, the most important thing you've been saying to me, is you're expanding what they know is possible, what they think they can do, what they're learning. You're doing that not only for your school, obviously, but for all the bands in the state. So this is perhaps the most remarkable thing. You decided to go back, sort of start over in this small town, and look what you're doing. Your impact is much bigger than just the kids in your band. But I love that this idea of expanding somebody's universe, what they think is possible, what they know, where they've been, what experiences they've had. This is a huge gift to those students in a community.
Well, and let me go on that. So this website we're putting together with the tapes, all these educational tapes, I'm working with on it because we're trying to get it adopted by the state, and then I'm trying to design a state finals. We're trying to get our bandmasters to adopt it, because here in West Virginia, you could go and show up at I talk to band directors. Why are you going to these shows where there's no criteria? There are shows you show up and though you don't know what sheets are being used. It could be whatever that judge brought that he likes to use.
Wow.
And so I'm like, all the time, all the money, all the resources, and yet you don't know how you're being judged. None of us would take a college class without a syllabus. And so what we're doing is trying to create a standard and educate them on pretty much a standard process used around the country and the world. And all these people are doing these tapes. Well, one of the things I ask them to do on these these videotapes, all these big names I mentioned, is make it so that parents, students, and staff can listen to.
Right. That's great.
And all my kids in this volunteer marching band, we're going to sit down this summer with the rubrics they're going to be judged on. They're going to watch all the videos. And so talk about expanding. This spring, we've developed our chamber programs, since we have the unique instruments to do, like a full clarinet choir, sax quartet, those kinds of things. We added a jazz band this spring. And I wasn't going to do marching band, not required to do the marching band, but basically I came back from a judging festival this fall, and kids have been bugging me to do marching band. And I got mad. I was on the field watching a small band be bad. And I got mad, not at the kids, but for the kids, because it wasn't their fault.
Sure.
Never the kids' fault.
Right.
And I said, I could take my best 20 kids, not about beating them, just and put on a good production. And so I came back and said, all right, you little turkeys, you want to do this? Here's how we're going to do it. You don't know what it is. So of our 70 some in the program, I have 44 going to the first band camp ever in 2 weeks.
Wow.
The show was picked back in December based on who signed up. It was written specifically for them and where I want them to be by the end of marching band season. And all our warm-ups come from inside the circle, Matt Harloff. And what's in my friends writing a show to set up for our grade 5 music for contest. It's all part of the process.
Sure.
So they're going to be educated in all this. And I'm taking them to watch semifinals and nationals. Okay. I've developed a relationship with Senator Manchin. I was on a plane flight with him. I was coming back from judging a Winter Guard show, who gave me in touch with his wife, who got me in touch, who's the head of the Appalachian Regional Council. And she's doing things for us, who got me in touch with a direct, long story short, there's a president of one of the small universities in the state who's a professional jazz trumpet player. He's setting up a partnership with our school to bring his people out next year. He's bringing Bob Thompson's professional band into our school. We had
what you're back to where you were earlier about relationship building, and that's where we started. And you're building the relationship with your students by teaching them all of these things they need to know and about what's expected. You're doing it with the parents, with the community, with all the people in the community, and in your professional community.
And the last thing I'll punch on that, because I know we need to get off this. The other night I couldn't start rehearsal, and I told one of my kids to start. I went down there and he was teaching, and I was listening to him, and I was blown away how effective he was, what he was picking out. Because part of our warm up process at contest or rehearsal, after I do my things, what do you guys think we need? Well, Dr. Carlisle, yesterday we were slowing down at the key change, or we need to. The trumpets aren't mentioned, the clarinet articulations.
Love it.
They give me input in the rehearsal. And finally, the whole community thing. I'm trying to break some third generational welfare. By going to Hawaii, I'm making this a school-wide project. This is going to be a celebration for the whole community. Get behind. This is our kids. Show them a world outside of that.
Yes.
And the school is going to do special events. We're going to do study of culture. We're going to do art study and make it a project for the whole school to be proud.
And for the whole community to be proud of. That you're taking, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Trying to have it. And it's just taking the impact that you can have of a music program to a whole nother level. And then then they asked me they hired me as principal. So,
well, listen, this is why I was happy to get to talk to you, because this is an amazing story. But I love that you have demonstrated over and over how to make an impact and make a difference. We all know that music programs and our teachers can do this. This is just a great story as another example of how that's happening and how you're lifting the whole community by being there and doing great work. I'm sure it was a shock to step into that school the first day and think, okay, here I am, retired successful guy with all these accomplishments, and I'm going to be doing this. But I love that you have brought that to that community and those students, and it's obviously rippling out to everybody around the state, et cetera. So thank you for sharing this story and for doing this great work. And this is a really inspiring thing. There's a lot of nuggets that we've talked about that I think a lot of people can take away. What do you want to say as we're finishing?
For all you young directors out there, know what the culture is you're going into and adjust to it. Don't make it adjust to you. There's time to change. And don't go in and look at what you don't have. Look at what you have and start finding the people that will get it for you. No one's going to hand you anything. Everything that band has, I spent 3 days of my Thanksgiving break with a box full of band shirts going to every lawyer, everybody that was a player, a plant manager, you name it, and talking about what we're doing, talking about funding, and giving them a band t-shirt. That's what I did for the 3 days for Thanksgiving break. And I find where the money is. I find who the players are. I talk to the county commissioners. Now, I had a leg up on that. So any young guys go out there, don't just sit there and dwell, well, they don't do this. The administration's not supportive, or they're not going to make it important until you make it important. Half your job as a music educator is not to teach kids, it's to teach the community and the adults around the importance. The least thing I do in my job is teach music. That's the least amount of time I spend.
Wow.
You have to be, if you sit there and just moan about not having things, I'd celebrate the fact that cymbal handles work, those Walmart bags. All right. And then said about how to get heads on the drums. It was baby steps. And then as success breeds success, I advertise it. I got it in the newspaper. I got it online. And if anyone's friends with me on Facebook knows, it's become my personal blog. Do you know how many checks for multiple thousands of dollars I've gotten because I blog about that band so much? Long story short, Carl Bly, famous band director in Virginia, was at Lake Braddock. He's a friend of mine. He saw that I got these good deal on these contrabass and contra alto clarinets, which start my show into my alto flute solo.
Interesting.
And I mentioned the alto flute solo. I said earlier, I had a girl show up one day with an alto flute. Where'd you get that at? I told Mom and Dad I wanted one. So I have a harmonica solo. I have all these kids that are exploring these different instruments. I said, we're going to put them in the show.
Sure.
To be different. But anyway, my point is to all that is I had a point and I got myself sidetracked. My point is you have to go out and sell. And you've got to get people on your side. Oh, I started telling you about Carl Bly. He tells a retired clarinet professor at BCU that I found all these instruments and kind of fixed up these bass, contrabass, and the alto clarinet given to me, because you do actually need one for a choir. And he said he doesn't have an E flat soprano. Guy goes, I have an extra, I'll give it to him. And so by blogging and advertising and getting the word out there, reaching out to you to get things like this, it's gotten me more resources.
Yeah, it's relationships.
Right. And so the last thing I say to a young band director, build relationships. Don't be I'm probably one of the worst musicians you ever met to have the bands I had. But if I don't know it, I ask and I go to the people. And I've been fortunate to rub elbows with the biggest names. Now I'm lucky. But even before that, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to sell.
JR, thank you for talking to me. This was a real joy. I really, really appreciate it.
Tim, I appreciate you allowing me to share this story.
Marching Arts Education is the home of the Marching Roundtable podcast. We give you access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, podcasts, videos, interviews, and online coursework. With over 1,000 podcasts and hundreds of webinars and videos, there are hours of great professional development for you and your staff. Sign up for a membership to Marching Arts Education to get complete access to all webinars, videos, and podcasts, plus discounts on coursework. Many directors are using professional development funds through their school or boosters to make these resources available to their staff. Imagine what you could do with so many great new ideas from the top professionals in our activity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter to find out about the latest podcasts, webinars, and new content. Find all of this and sign up at marchingartseducation.com.